A Patriot missile battery operator on the island of Bahrain sees the very first contact appear on his radar screen. It is low and slow, coming from the northeast, moving up the Gulf at just 110 knots. A second contact shows up right behind the first one. Then a third appears, and then six more follow in quick succession. They are Shahed drones, Iranian-made weapons with swept wings and a loud two-stroke engine mounted on the tail. Each one carries enough explosive power to completely destroy a large building. At least a dozen of these drones are heading straight for Naval Support Activity Bahrain, a major American base where about 8,000 U.S. soldiers and their families are sleeping soundly, only half a mile away from the base's outer fence. The problem facing the battery commander is a difficult calculation. A single PAC-3 interceptor missile costs about $4 million to build and fire. One Shahed drone, on the other hand, costs roughly $30,000. For every expensive interceptor they launch, that is one less weapon available if something far more dangerous and bigger shows up later, hidden behind this first wave of cheap drones. Despite this, the battery makes the decision to fire. The launch canister blows open, and the PAC-3 missile rockets off the launcher on a massive pillar of bright white exhaust. The missile is 17 feet long, essentially a guided telephone pole, and it accelerates to 5 times the speed of sound in less than 2 seconds. It carries no regular warhead and has no fragmentation effect. It is simply a 700-pound guided brick that steers itself directly into the target nose first and lets pure kinetic energy do all the destructive work. The Shahed drone does not try to maneuver and never even detects the threat approaching it. The PAC-3 shreds the drone high over the harbor, and debris rains down harmlessly into the water below. Iran had sent enough drones in this wave to try and drain the ammunition racks of the American batteries. The Shahed were never actually meant to hit anything important. They were simply bait, designed to be killed while serving a different purpose. While both Patriot batteries are still angled toward the northeast, busy cleaning up the last of the drone swarm, a completely different threat appears. A Fatah-1 ballistic missile drops from directly overhead on a near-vertical descent, traveling at Mach 13, which is 13 times the speed of sound. This is Iran's most advanced weapon, and it is slipping through the defenses while the gunners are occupied with the slower drones. The warhead hits a service center located only about 130 feet away from the main command hub of the base. A second missile follows immediately and flattens a satellite uplink dish that was critical for communications. The satellite uplink that got destroyed was only one of at least half a dozen different ways that Fifth Fleet uses to talk to its ships at sea. There is still HF radio, UHF satellite communications, the Link 16 tactical data link, fleet broadband, and even encrypted chat programs. The communication systems automatically reroute within just a few minutes, so the base is not completely silent, but the damage has been done. At 3 in the morning local time, more Iranian ballistic missiles cross the coastline of Qatar in large stacks, one after another. The second salvo is already climbing up into the sky before the first salvo has even arrived at its target area. The third salvo is right behind the second. The whole attack is designed to keep the Patriot battery at Al Udeid Air Base constantly cycling through reloads without ever getting a gap or a break in the action. A PAC-3 MSE operator picks up the lead incoming track at a distance of 40 miles. The computer calculates speed, trajectory, and probable impact point in under 2 seconds. The launch canister blows open and the PAC-3 MSE clears the launcher. It flies at Mach 5, steering with altitude thrusters that fire millimeter-perfect corrections. At the closing speed of this engagement, both objects will simply cease to exist on contact with each other. The very first intercept flashes brightly above the city of Doha at an altitude of 80,000 feet. The combined closing speed is over 8,000 miles per hour, and the collision converts both the interceptor and the Iranian warhead into a fine spray of particles high in the atmosphere. A second PAC-3 is already climbing to engage another target. For 90 straight seconds, every single Iranian missile that comes in meets an American interceptor on its way up, and the sky is filled with flashes. The one success that Iran manages to achieve at Al-Udeid comes from a maneuvering warhead that fires small lateral thrusters at 30,000 feet. This shifts its trajectory just enough to slide past interceptors that are already committed to the original flight path they were tracking. Two warheads and one low-flying Shahed drone managed to get through the saturated window of defense. An AN/FPS-132 early warning radar takes some damage from the blasts, and a section of the flight line gets cratered by falling debris. However, the E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft that is orbiting at 30,000 feet continues doing the exact same job that the ground radar was doing before it got hit. The base switches over to backup power, backup communications, and backup sensors without missing a beat. The cratered section of the flight line gets patched with rapid-set concrete within the hour, and operations resume. Over at al-Salem Air Base in Kuwait, the situation is even more intense. 380 inbound projectiles, a mix of ballistic missiles and drones stacked together in a single massive wave, converge on the base. Salvo after salvo keeps coming, making this the largest combined barrage that any missile defense battery has ever faced in modern warfare. A PAC-3 operator acquires the first inbound missile, a Shahab variant, at the very edge of his engagement envelope. It is 35 miles out and descending through 60,000 feet at Mach 6. He fires two interceptors 8 seconds apart. The first one catches the warhead at 40,000 feet in a brilliant flash. The second interceptor, which is already committed and flying, self-destructs automatically when it loses its original target. The batteries just keep on firing. White exhaust arcs keep climbing into the sky in pairs, flashing at altitude as intercept meets target, and wreckage trails start streaking back earthward. Canisters are emptied, swapped out, and reloaded by ground crews, working under the strobe light flicker of their own interceptors launching directly overhead. 380 separate engagements happen in rapid succession, and 0 leakers get through to hit the base itself. 380 debris clouds fall somewhere across the region. Most of it lands in the open desert, but some shrapnel from a high-altitude intercept rains down through a supply staging area, causing minor damage to equipment. One stray drone that gets shot down clips the edge of Kuwait International Airport before it falls, but the damage is limited. A THAAD battery stationed at Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates gets the launch notification at 3:47 in the morning local time. 2 ballistic tracks are detected, flying a high arc and inbound from Iranian territory. The battery fires immediately. The interceptor climbs on a single-stage solid rocket motor right up through the troposphere, then through the stratosphere, and finally into the thin blackness of space where the sky stops being blue. At an altitude of 60 miles, the nose cone separates, and the kinetic interceptor, which is about the size of a basketball and packed with infrared seekers and its own small divert thrusters, flies free on its own. 60 miles up, the seeker locks onto the descending Iranian warhead against the cold, dark background of space. The tiny thrusters fire millimeter-perfect corrections, and the two objects meet head-on. The kinetic energy converts both of them into vapor 60 miles above the desert floor. 2 bright flashes appear above Abu Dhabi, bright enough to be photographed clearly from the ground. A second interceptor handles the second track in the same way. Iran ends up firing over 300 missiles and drones at the UAE that night. Every single one that is aimed at a military target gets intercepted successfully. Al Dhafra stays in the fight without a single scratch and continues operating normally. Over in Jordan, at Muwafaq Salti Air Base, 49 separate projectiles converge on the facility. These are ballistic missiles and drones, all mixed together in complex salvos designed to confuse the defense. Jordanian interceptors climb hard to meet the threat. A THAAD battery takes on the highest and fastest threats, engaging them at the edge of space. Despite all this effort, one warhead manages to punch through the perimeter defenses and hits a structure on the base. While this is happening, an F-35 pilot advances his throttle to military power. The engine produces 43,000 pounds of thrust. He releases the brakes, and the F-35 accelerates down the runway with sirens wailing all around him. Smoke is visible rising from a structure that just took a direct hit nearby, and interceptor contrails are crisscrossing the sky above in every direction. The jet rotates smoothly into the dark night with missiles still arcing overhead. The HUD populates with waypoints and targeting data. The first target is an IRGC command relay facility in western Iran, and the coordinates were updated just 6 minutes ago via the Link 16 data link. 60 other American combat aircraft operated out of Muwafaq Salti that same night, including F-35As, FA-18s, and tankers that kept cycling on and off the runway between incoming salvos. Ground crews patched up blast damage with rapid-set concrete between launch cycles, keeping the base functional. Iran had used targeting data from Chinese commercial satellites that was precise enough to identify individual aircraft shelters on the ground. Despite this intelligence, every single one of those jets took off anyway and got airborne to carry out their missions. Further north, Iraqi militia forces, positioned about 60 miles to the south, launched cheap Iranian-designed drones at American compounds in Erbil. They came in close enough that people on the ground could hear the engines buzzing before any radar could paint them clearly. There were 16 separate drone attacks on American positions throughout the night. A CIWS close-in weapon system operator hears the first one before his scope even shows anything. It is just a cheap two-stroke engine buzzing in the dark at an altitude of only 300 feet. The CIWS's search radar acquires the target quickly. The tracking radar refines the firing solution. The 20mm M61 Gatling gun spins up to 4,500 rounds per minute, its 6-barrel assembly rotating over 12 times a second. Tungsten rounds leave the muzzle at 3,600 feet per second. The drone disintegrates at close range. From the moment of radar contact to scrap metal falling from the sky, only 4 seconds pass. A second drone comes from a completely different bearing, trying to flank the defense. The gun slews around rapidly, locks on, and fires. A third comes from the northwest, then a fourth. All 16 attacks are defeated, and 0 impacts happen inside the perimeter. The only American asset damaged that night was a section of perimeter fence hit by falling drone debris from a successful intercept, which is minor in the grand scheme of things. Out at sea, the IRGC launches ballistic missiles at Carrier Strike Group 3, operating in the northern Arabian Sea. The USS Lincoln, the aircraft carrier at the heart of the group, heels over into a hard turn. 4 massive screws churn the Arabian Sea white as 100,000 tons of warship pivots sharply to present the smallest possible radar cross-section to the inbound tracks. Aegis cruisers and guided missile destroyers spread out wide across the formation, creating a layered defense. Their AN-SPY 1D phased array radars track everything inbound before those threats even clear Iranian airspace. Each ship has 4 fixed arrays with no moving parts, and they are already building firing solutions on threats that are still climbing out of Iran before those missiles even reach the top of their arc. SM-3 interceptors climb out of vertical launch cells on 2 different destroyers. The VLS hatches blow open, boosters ignite, and 3,000-pound missiles clear the decks. This is exo-atmospheric interception, catching warheads in space before they can even start their terminal dive toward the ships. The SM-3 sheds its first stage booster, then its second, and then its third. The kinetic warhead, again about the size of a basketball, rides into the vacuum above the Arabian Sea at Mach 13, steering with tiny puffs of nitrogen gas measured in millimeters per second. 2 bright flashes appear high above. 2 tracks are gone before they ever started falling back toward Earth. SM-2 missiles handle the next wave of targets during their descent phase, with interceptors screaming upward from 3 destroyers simultaneously and converging on warheads falling at hypersonic speed. A pair of Shahed drones hugging the water at only 50 feet of altitude try to sneak in under the radar coverage, hoping to stay hidden in the sea clutter. 2 Ram missiles ripple off the launcher just 3 seconds apart. Each one is a 5-foot guided missile with an infrared seeker homing in on the drone's hot engine exhaust. The first Ram tracks its Shahed right across the wave tops and hits it low enough to scatter wreckage across the surface of the water. The second Ram catches the trailing drone about a mile behind the first one. Not a single Iranian weapon touches the carrier or any ship in the entire formation that night. 15 minutes later, the flight deck is clear again, and catapult steam is building pressure. The air boss calls out every combat aircraft parked on the roof, all loaded to maximum gross weight with weapons and fuel, and they begin launching in sequence. An FA-18 from Strike Fighter Squadron 41 rolls onto catapult number 1, carrying 4 GBU-31 JDAMs. That is 8,000 pounds of GPS-guided ordnance aimed directly at the IRGC's underground command bunker, located at Esfahan in Iran. The catapult officer drops to one knee and touches the deck. The jet goes from 0 to 165 miles per hour in under 3 seconds. The Super Hornet clears the bow of the ship and climbs east into the night sky. Catapult 2 fires next, then Catapult 1 again, then Catapult 2 again. 14 jets launch in just 9 minutes, including Super Hornets, Growler electronic attack aircraft, and an E-2 Hawkeye surveillance plane. Every single pylon is loaded with weapons, and every single jet is headed for Iran to deliver their payloads and continue the fight.